the Planning Committee. I'm Councillor David Brotherton. I'll be chairing this meeting. May I remind everyone that this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. Only those members of the public who are registered to speak are allowed to do so, and I'll call on them to speak during the appropriate agenda item. This meeting is being held in our offices at Abbey House, Abingdon. Committee members are here in person, but officers and speakers are able to join remotely. I've got to say the meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel for public viewing, but it's not for long. I don't know why. The system allows councillors who are unable to attend in person to contribute to the meeting, but only councillors who are present in the room are allowed to vote. For speakers and members of the public who join remotely, please ensure that your microphone is muted, your camera is off for the duration of the meeting until you are called to speak. Oh, that's the wrong button. Planning Committee is a decision-making committee of the council and is important that a set procedure is followed. All committee members have received a full report on each planning application, either on paper or electronically, and it should be noted that committee members and officers may be using electronic devices for reference throughout the meeting. For each application, we'll first hear from the planning officer, followed by the parish or town council, and then objectors, supporters and local members. Each group will have 5 minutes to speak to the committee, after which members may ask questions of the speaker. The committee will then ask questions of clarification of the planning officer. The committee will then debate and vote on the application. Councillors wishing to ask questions or participate in the debate are asked to indicate this by alerting myself or officers by raising a hand.
Bye.
Voting will be by shows of hands. Members, please raise your hand clearly and keep it raised to allow a count to take place. If it is unclear how members are voting through a show of hands, I'll ask the clerk to take a roll call of those present and how they are voting. A few housekeeping announcements. In the event of emergencies, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is in the corridor immediately to the right of this meeting room, and then go to assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. The Democratic Services Officer present will assist you. Everyone, please ensure that their mobile phone is switched to silent or switched off during the meeting. Members of the public who wish to leave the meeting after their application has been heard are welcome to do so via the front door in reception. When the meeting is finished, I will ask for confirmation that the live stream has ended, if it ever starts. At that point, please leave the meeting and make your way out of the building. Remember to sign out as you leave. Right. So second item 2 on the agenda then is apologies for absence.
Chair, we've received apologies from councillors Gordon Creed and Norman, and Councillor Joe Webb is here as substitute for Councillor Norman.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting to adopt and sign as a correct record the planning committee minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of July. I'll move, Chairman. Thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you. Declaration of interest. To receive declarations of disclosable peculiar interest, other registrable interest, non-registrable interest, or any conflicts of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. I see none. Thank you. Urgent business. To receive notification of any urgent matters which the chair may consider urgent.
There's no urgent business.
There's no urgent business. Okay, so we'll move on to the planning applications. And the first one is P24S2642 full. You will note these next two planning applications are both for the same area, but we must deliberate on them separately, take them as 2 separate agenda items. So our planning officer on both cases is Emma, so I'll hand over to Emma the presentation on the first item.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site is a field that's within the parish of Harpston, but it adjoins the settlement of Lower Tipney. The proposed Thames Farm development has been added to this aerial photo. It also shows a scheme of 40 new homes currently being built out on the former Wydevale Garden Centre to the north, and 11 homes that are under construction on the parcel to the south. The site's underlain by a principal aquifer, which is a geological formation that holds groundwater. It's classed as a groundwater source protection zone as there's water abstraction for public water supply near to the site. The Thames Water Abstraction Facility is located across the road from the former Wildvale Garden Centre. The development of the site therefore has the potential to affect groundwater quality, which could have implications for water abstraction. Thames Farm has a complex planning history, which is detailed in the agenda. The key point to take from the planning history is that this site has an extant planning permission for 95 homes. The permission for 95 homes has been implemented as the access has been constructed, which you can see on the photo. The applicant's not been able to continue constructing the housing development as ground investigations uncovered dissolution features across the site. Dissolution features are geological formations created when soluble rocks are dissolved by water, leading to voids and cavities underground. This application proposes engineering operations to stabilise the site to enable the housing development to be built. We're not considering the amendments to the layout under this application or the drainage scheme associated with the housing application. This one's just for the engineering operations and associated works. So the proposed engineering operations involve compaction grouting, where a mortar-like substance is injected into the ground to reduce pore spaces and improve ground strength, and dynamic compaction, which is a ground improvement technique that densifies the soil to reconnect any soft spots. The drill and grout plan, which is on the screen, it was also included in your agenda, shows the dissolution features in green. The proposed ground stabilisation works are environmental impact assessment development, as the development's likely to have significant effects on the environment. The application is therefore accompanied by an environmental statement, which considers the likely significant effects of the development on the water environment and the mitigation measures necessary to prevent, reduce or offset any significant effects. Now, whilst the groundworks are taking place, there'll be a temporary surface water arrangement in place incorporating containment bunds. So this is shown on the screen, and again you can see the detail in your agenda pack. As part of the application process, we consulted with specialist agencies and officers to provide advice on the impact that the development will have on the aquifer and public water abstraction. Following the submission of amended details, the Environment Agency, Thames Water, our lead local flood authority, which is the County Council, and our in-house drainage officer all have no objections to the proposals. The officers at the Environment Agency and Thames Water are satisfied that the submitted documents contain sufficient information for them to accept that the final details for the source protection strategy can be secured by condition. This condition, which is condition number 4 of Appendix 6, has a requirement to include details of measures to ensure the water abstraction source is not detrimentally affected by the development, to also include details of a monitoring programme and, if necessary, a remediation scheme. So other relevant matters that are addressed in my report include concerns that have been raised by our landscape officer, who is concerned about soils becoming waterlogged and compact during the groundworks. This has been addressed through the submission of a soil management strategy, which can be secured by a condition. Both the council's landscape officer and tree officer raised concerns about the position of the site compound, and that's the orange rectangular box, which is over to the right, located near to the road. The housing development would include tree planting in this location, and there are concerns that the placement of a compound in this area would compact the soil and compromise the establishment of the planting. This area would be provided with a restored soil profile, which I consider to be an appropriate solution to ensure the benefits of the planting are realised. I've got a few quick updates for the committee. So since writing the report, we've received 7 further objections from residents, and these raise the same issues that are reported in the report. The chair of the Henley Society has also provided a further letter of objection, and that's on behalf of the 682 members of the society. It raises concerns over the risks to the water supply, which they believe have not been properly assessed. I do appreciate that this is a very controversial scheme and that a significant number of objections have been raised in respect of the potential impact on the water supply. This is a highly technical and complex matter, and the specialist officers that the council rely on for advice on such matters have not objected to the proposal. So on this basis, I consider that the proposed ground stabilisation works comply with the development plan and would enable the delivery of a housing development that has previously been consented. So as such, the application is recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you, Emma. We'll come back to you, I think. Right, okay, we have a number of speakers registered, and this is an important application with a great deal of local interest. Therefore, you'll see from my list, I've used my discretion as chairman of the committee to vary the normal speaker rules, so as not to dilute the time allowed for objectors and supporters. I will allow our local MP to speak after the objectors, but before the supporters. Committee members were able to ask each speaker questions as normal. So the first speaker I have is Councillor Pheasant. Yep, will you please come to the table and you have your 5 minutes.
Before I start speaking, in terms of this response here, will that cover the 3 applications? Or do I have to repeat it specifically for each?
It's just for this one application. Yeah, and you need to ensure that you do talk to this application, not to the next one.
Okay. Fine. Right. Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity of speaking today. I'm the Vice Chair of Shiplake Parish Council, and I liaise with the Thames Farm Action Group, TFAG, benefiting enormously from their hydrogeology planning expertise and local knowledge. This enables us to highlight the very major concerns with this site. The strong financial support of Henley, Shiplake, Harpsden councils and donations from many residents has enabled us to contract the necessary hydrogeology expertise, which has confirmed the very serious concerns with the Thames Farm development proposals. The content of TFAG's open letter, which has been circulated to all of you, and I hope helped in clarifying things, and it does clarify the extremely serious current situation of why Shiplake, Henley, Harpsden Council very strongly advocate rejection of this application. We trust we have found the clarification that has been provided by that open letter is helpful in understanding. There is a lack of scientific evidence provided by Taylor Wimpey to support their proposals, which results in uncertainty and a massive risk in approving their application. It's one that may destroy the sole source of drinking water for circa 50,000 people with no other alternative. The evidence to support T&W's proposal is insufficient to approve this application. Complex projects need to be thoroughly assessed and managed to achieve successful outcomes. The Secretary of State has confirmed that a full environmental impact assessment is required for Thames Farm because of the environmental risks. It would appear that Taylor Wimpey takes too many risks in that context. A Google search of Taylor Wimpey flooded building sites highlighted several developments with problems, one of which, Kirk Levington, required tankers running at all hours through the village, preventing flooding from a suds pond. I have a list of other Wimpey sites with flooding problems. It is in the public domain. One assumes that Taylor Wimpey evaluates the viability of sites poorly, takes too big a risk, and leaves householders with the problems. With the complexity and unknowns of the site in question, safeguards need, as stated, to be in place based on a thorough environmental impact assessment. The precautionary principle applies. There is an overriding genuine concern regarding contamination or permanent loss of water supply for the aquifer, which must take priority over all considerations. I thank you for your time, and I appreciate my fellow Prince who will be talking next has much to reference in objecting to these applications, which should help you come to the right decision in rejecting this application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pheasant. Committee, has anybody got any questions? No, I see none. So thank you very much for your presentation and your time. Thanks. Our next speaker is Peter Forrest.
So I think they're probably done with you.
Mr. Burrows, yours 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Before I start speaking, I just want to refer to the fact that I did circulate a letter to all the members and
I
alternates.
think we've all received them.
I'm taking that as read, and I'm not going to refer to the technical issues that have been raised in that letter. So I would like to make that point in advance. I'm here on behalf of the Thames Farm Action Group, which represents hundreds of residents who are deeply concerned about the safety and the legitimacy of this proposal. What's being proposed here carries a real, unassessed risk to the drinking water supply of over 50,000 people. That simply cannot be allowed to happen, and you members must fully understand today's decisions and its potential ramifications. It's not the houses that we're discussing here today. It's the 50-foot deep, 14 metres deep of 30,000 tonnes of concrete below ground that we're actually talking about, which is a vast amount of concrete. And on top of that, there's going to be consolidated stones, which is probably going to weigh another 200,000 tonnes at least. And this isn't just speculation. The site is a source protection zone grade 1. It's one of the most sensitive groundwater resources in the country. And yet, there's no peer-reviewed evidence being put forward, no independent testing, no real-world case studies, or even similar examples of work like this to show that the proposed grouting and vibro compaction works are safe in a location like this. It is a very special and unusual situation. Why is there no such evidence? If it existed, surely the applicant would have shown it by now. But nothing. This has been going on for 10 years. Nothing. No evidence at all. Instead, we're being asked to rely on theory and the paid opinion of contractors expecting to do work to whom we have no recourse whatsoever. We're asked to believe that concrete slurry injected to a depth of maybe 14 metres will just stop short of the water table immediately below it. And it won't leak into unknown underground voids. And yet it's those very voids that it's designed to block out. It just seems incredulous. Is it really plausible that concrete slurry will be so selective and so predictable? Of course not. The site's about 10 times the size of Wembley football pitch. Just think about that. That is absolutely huge. It's going to be filled to a depth of 50 feet with 11,000 cubic meters of concrete, according to the applicant, that is. That, for those that find it hard to visualize, is the equivalent of 30,000 tons. You could think of it as 6,000 elephants if you wanted to. And then on top of that will be this vibro compacted layer 3 meters deep of granular stone, and that probably adds a further 200,000 tons of weight. Are they telling us that that will have no material impact on the aquifer, neither its volume or its flow rate? The claim is simply not credible. I'm sorry, but it isn't. And once done, this will be permanent. There's no going back. It will not allow water to percolate down to the aquifer. That's why they are collecting surface water and pumping it to a vast detention basin. And are we going to do that for, I don't know, the next 500 years with all the electricity that that's going to consume? Because the point is, once it's happened, it can't be undone.
30 seconds left.
There's still a need for the water. Why are we pushing the limits of credibility here? Why are we putting our water supply at risk? It's simply not necessary. If this was a new application, officers specifically confirmed that it would not be acceptable works. The only reason we're even considering it is because of the allegedly extant planning consent, which was deemed as implemented after unlawful highway works.
Sorry, that's your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Well, may I finish? There's not a lot more to do.
Sorry, 5 minutes is that it? Okay. We will be asking questions, so maybe you can.
Can I take the other minute, please?
Right, committee, I'm sure there's questions for Mr. Burrows. Councillor Rob.
My question was, what were you going to say next, please?
I'm very happy to answer your question.
Allowed.
Councillor.
Not allowed.
You'll allow it?
No,
Oh, I'm interested because he started
Sorry,
talking.
that's a question. I'm
yes, it's
entitled.
not a question about the subject you've been asking.
Well, it is.
I need to continue with
It
this.
is.
So, yeah, it's not allowed, Joe, sorry.
That's ridiculous.
There must be some proper questions.
I think for a matter this complex that has been running for 10 years,
I'm aware of that. Yeah.
it's absolutely ludicrous.
Councillor Sadler.
Yes, could you just expand a little bit on that water collection basin? Just carry on talking about that bit.
Yes, I'm not an expert in water collection, but as I've stated, once the site has been filled with this material, it will no longer let any water through. And so any surface water runoff, whether it's from roofs, whether it's from parking areas, garage roofs, whatever, is going to be diverted and channeled into a variety of receptacles around the site and then pumped up to the western extremity of the site, the southwestern extremity of the site, which is raised. And there, this huge detention basin is going to be created where this water will end up. And that the plan is that that water will then percolate down again and effectively reinstate the damage that they've done to the aquifer by preventing it from receiving water in the first place. It has to be remembered that when all of this started 10 years ago, the very, very first application that was made in relation to the disposal of surface water from this site was deep bore drain holes. And it was specifically rejected by the Environment Agency. So an application to do what they are now proposing to do has already been rejected.
This is the boreholes at 2 meters. Is that the ones or?
No, going right back to the time when they were going for an outline planning permission, etc. The original proposal that they had come up with was effectively drilling some very, very deep holes in the ground, for want of a better description, and channeling surface water down into the ground. And that was specifically rejected by the Environment Agency. Has been far
Any
too risky.
further questions? Councillor Trinity.
Yes, if we should have this engineering work, hypothetically, but the housing was developed and that much of the site was covered in impermeable surfaces through the houses and the roads, there wouldn't be any water going into the aquifer anyway, would there?
Well, yes, because any modern scheme will be designed with a proper suds infiltration system for the removal of surface water drainage. So under normal circumstances, you would be getting rid of all of the water that you collect as a result of having hard surfaces rather than open ground through your subs drainage system. So you would have grasscrete and things of that nature that allow water to go through, etc. And it would be and it's why it's called subs, it's a sustainable form of development whereby you're making up for creating lots and lots of hard surfaces by allowing the water to infiltrate in various locations around the site. But it wouldn't be a single borehole where you collect all of the surface water that's been collected all around the site and pump it up to this whacking great detention basin. God forbid anybody that falls into a detention basin because it's pretty steep.
Thank you.
And they're not going to find their way out of it. It's far too steep, as the engineers have pointed out.
Yeah, my question was, do you know what proportion of the aquifer is accounted for by this site? So if this site is 10, 15, 20 acres, how big is the aquifer if that's known?
The honest answer to that question is no, I don't. However, what I can refer you to are the two developments that were referred to at the beginning of the meeting on either side of Thames Farm.
Yeah.
They do not have the same problems as Thames Farm has. So one could draw a conclusion from that because they don't have this type of groundwork system. It's completely unnecessary because they don't have the same dissolution features in the ground. One could take it, I think not unreasonably, that the extent of the aquifer is broadly the width of the site.
Right. So the reason for asking that was that if this was only a tiny proportion,
I'm sure Taylor Wimpey would be able to answer that question for you.
I'll direct it then. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions? I see none, so thank you very much, Mr. Morris, on this feeling.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, so RMP's online. Freddie, are you there? You can leave now, Mr. No, Freddie first. Good to see you, Freddie. You have
too.
like 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll be very brief because I appreciate you've got a lot to get through. And thank you for the opportunity for speaking today. Just to say as well, I know very well, having been a district councillor, that these decisions are for councillors, not for MPs. But I didn't think I would be doing my job correctly if I didn't add my voice to the concerns being raised on this development. There is, as you've heard, a very real risk of contamination of the region's sole supply of drinking water that is relied by over 50,000 residents, which is a huge number of residents, including Henley, Harpston and Shiplake, and I include myself in one of those residents. There appears to be no contingency plan should the fears over drinking water be realised. There is no plan whatsoever to know what to do if the worst is realised. We don't know how water would be distributed to those settlements in the case that water becomes contaminated. The consequences would be severe and far-reaching. The decision is clearly in your hands, councillors, but I do ask the committee to be satisfied that the environmental impacts have been assessed before proceeding, and if you have any doubts whatsoever, in line with the precautionary principle, as I do, reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie. Committee, has anybody got any questions for? No, they haven't. You got a free. Thank you. Not politely anyway. Okay. Right. 2 more speakers. You're last. Okay. So our next speaker is the agent, Robin Shepherd. Again, Mr. Shepherd, you have 5 minutes from the moment you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today on this application on behalf of Taylor Wimpey. This application deals with detailed technical matters, and I congratulate your officer in her report, which clearly explains what is proposed, why this application is needed, and the assessments that have been carefully undertaken. I am also conscious of the level of interest from the local community, which we believe your officer's report adequately addresses. The principle of development on this site was established back in 2017 when planning permission was granted. That permission has been legally implemented. But also draw your attention to what your officer mentioned about the development north and south of this application site as well. This application therefore deals with technical details related to ground conditions that will enable the much needed development to proceed. We're therefore long past the stage of determining whether residential development should or should not be permitted. It's fair to say that what is before you has taken some time to be finalised, and that is testament to the rigour, the care and the consideration given to exploring and assessing a wide range of options, informed by leading experts seeking to provide the necessary ground stabilisation, whilst draining the site in a way which protects the water supply for future generations. The proposed method, as you've heard, is known as grouting, which will involve the removal of topsoil and the careful injection of a stiff mix up to 2 metres in depth above the water table to provide a solid base for construction. That is not across the entire site, as was mentioned by your officer. The topsoil will then be replaced across those areas, and over the period of those works, ground conditions will be monitored and reported. This method is well known, it's tried, and it's tested across the UK and overseas. As a consequence, there's no objections from the Environment Agency, Thames Water, from the Lead Flood Authority, or the Drainage Officer. In other words, those experts and those responsible for protecting water quality are satisfied with the proposed works and the conditions that are before you in the recommendation. In the technical detail, it's easy to lose sight of why these works are required. We continue to be in a housing crisis, with the council needing to grant planning permissions to meet local and national housing requirements. The resulting residential development will deliver much needed new homes, including affordable housing, high quality open space, ecological enhancement, and a wide range of economic benefits. As your officer mentioned, the proposed works accord with the development plan for the area, and members are therefore asked to approve these technical matters to enable these benefits to be realised. I'll just briefly turn to the matters raised by previous speakers. And not surprisingly, because of the complexity of the technical matters, there are a number of errors and perhaps some misunderstanding in what has been said. For example, about 2 metres above the water table and the extent of works across the whole site. There are lots of examples of this type of construction technique. It is tried and tested, and it's overseen by leading experts in this field as well as the statutory bodies. There has been a very detailed environmental assessment. That scope has been agreed with the Secretary of State, and the assessments have been accepted by the experts. The conditions requested by the Environment Agency and other bodies have been included in the recommendation, and those are legally binding. That's the safeguard. We have considered the worst case, and we've considered sensitivity analysis. That's the latest update your officer mentioned. So the assessments comply with all the necessary and all the relevant requirements and the standards, hence why there's no objections from those bodies and those people. The drainage basin has been mentioned, meets all the requisite requirements. Sustainable urban drainage is still across those parts of the site that won't have the grouting mix, and that includes, the woodland is excluded from that, obviously. What has been mentioned is about deep boreholes. There will be no deep boreholes undertaken. So I hope that helps clarify the matters that have been raised by local community. And thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions as best as I may.
Okay, thank you. See a number of questions. Councillor Sadler.
Yeah, so first of all, I know I note the point about the 2 metre boreholes instead of the very deep boreholes, but there's a number of areas of I don't know what the technical term is, but there's sort of spaces under there with
Dissolution features, they're
Yeah,
called.
so-
It's basically
yeah.
where the chalk's dissolved.
Okay, yeah, so I did kind of understand it correctly when I read it. I think. So the question is this. Obviously, the MP is very unusual for the MP to come along and
Yes.
make a point, but he did mention about the 50,000 people who are effectively at risk with their water supply. But I'm not hearing anything in what you're saying about there is no risk there. I mean, you haven't sort of eliminated that risk. You kind of talked around it, and you said you've talked about some very technical details, but you haven't said there's no risk. But you say there's no risk.
Well, your officers, the Environment Agency, Thames Water, the LFA drainage officers, all accepted that the level of risk is de minimis. No one will ever say there's absolutely no risk ever across any part of the country ever. That's never going to happen. All of the consent you've ever granted would never ever be able to say there's no risk. But the risk is so small. And the key point here is what's been talked about a lot today is about contamination. Well, that relies on contaminants. And one of the stipulations for an Environment Agency and Thames Water is that we exclude any contaminants. So there is no possibility from that point of view that there's contamination. Contamination to aquifer could happen in a number of different ways. And I'm not downplaying the 50,000 residents who, if worst case absolutely happened, then there would be some concern. But the Environment Agency, Thames Water, and the other bodies have clearly put in place very, very stringent monitoring requirements and reporting of that. So we cannot possibly go anywhere further to minimise the risks. If that answers the question.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins.
Yes, you said worst case now twice. What is the worst case?
Well, the worst case, as we're seeing, is we've assessed what's called, we got criticised by the community for not providing sensitivity analysis. In other words, we did the first assessment, and that said the level of risk is there, and that's limited, extremely limited. We were then asked to say, look, can you look even further afield? Can you look at even more worst case scenarios? And we're talking about extreme. And all of those reports have come back and independently assessed and reviewed by the statutory bodies as saying that's acceptable.
So you talk about a very de minimis risk, but such of what?
Well,
so we talked about worst case a couple of times. What is the worst case?
Let's take the developments to the north and south that have already happened.
Yeah.
There could be spillage of fuel, for example, and that could have seeped through. But again, we've got conditions in place to manage all of that. So it's difficult to say what those risks could be because we've looked at them and we've eliminated them.
So would it be fair to say a de minimis risk, but a very small risk is contamination of the aquifer with this slurry?
No, because there are no contaminants in. It's been called slurry here. It's a concrete mix. It's a stiff mix. So it's pumped in within certain parameters in certain locations around the site, and that's monitored.
Okay, so if that made it into the aquifer, if there were an issue, I don't know, the 2 metre gap at the moment, that made it into the aquifer, no problem.
Incredibly unlikely for that to happen. Yeah. The reason being is the distance between where it's pumped in and the aquifer.
Yeah.
So what happens is it's a bit like if you were to pour a bucket of water into a hole, except this is very, very solid. I'll come back to that. But you know how much has gone in, and therefore you can calculate, it's carefully calculated out. I've asked all these questions myself. How do you know when to stop? And the answer is, well, we know how much is pouring in. It'll only ever go in. The point is as well, you don't have to get rid of all of the dissolution features. The purpose for doing it is to provide a solid platform for the construction. That's all you need to do. So we're talking about the depth of foundations here.
So sorry, I will yield to someone else. So it would be a problem.
Incredibly unlikely.
Can I move on to Councillor Rob?
Oh,
Councillor Topping.
Thank you. I've got a number of questions. You talked about all the elements of the grouting being safe and non-toxic. And I think we all know what Portland cement is. I'm not 1000% sure that all elements of that are non-toxic, but I'll accept your description. Pea gravel, we all know what that is. But what is thixotropic admixture of bentonite if required? That is the third element of the grant.
It's a natural player, I've just been told.
Is that natural
Natural
clay? Right, okay, and that is acting as an impermeable
Yes, that's correct.
layer.
Yeah, so it's a natural
presumably.
product.
Right, okay, that is a natural product, right, good. I asked a previous speaker about the size of the aquifer and the extent to which this site represents of the total of the aquifer that supplies 50,000 people. Is this it, or does it cover a much wider area?
It covers a much wider area. It'd be ludicrous to think the aquifer just sits underneath our, our site, if you
That's
like.
what I
It covers a
imagine.
much wider area. Now, if you're going to ask me exactly where to, I don't have that information right before me now.
But would you
I
be
should
able
be
to
able to.
say it's sort of 10% of the total, or 1% of the total, or 50% of the total?
I couldn't tell you, but it's a much wider area.
Right.
To serve 50,000 population, it would have to be a much wider area.
Okay, so if something went wrong, this would have an impact of whatever the percentage this is of the total area that the water percolates through and gets into the aquifer. That's why I'm asking. Because
Yeah,
I just
I
want
get
to
it.
get a feel for how significant this site is against the whole of the area necessary to provide the water for 50,000 people.
It's a difficult one to answer because all of your experts and all of our experts are saying that the risks are so low that it's permission should be granted.
Right.
So none of your environment agency are incredibly cautious.
Mm.
They're one of the most difficult consultees to actually satisfy.
Yeah.
Thames Water the same. So if they're happy, then my view is then this development should approve because they're the experts. So it's in the extreme unlikely event that there was a problem, that problem is so carefully controlled and managed that it doesn't become a wider problem. If suddenly, for example, if there's a dissolution feature, it's like a channel, imagine chalk, and sort of like where drips of water have gone through over periods of time. It's a water passage. You pump some of the stiff mix into that, and you only need to pump a certain amount in to provide a solid foundation, and then you stop. If it gets to the point, and the method proposed as part of the application, if you end up pumping more in, you stop. You don't need to do any more. So it's not a question of just keeping going until there's a problem. It's nothing like that. It's the far extreme of that.
I might have one more question.
I'll let you have one more.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's move on.
This is a very specialist form of work. I was going to ask you who the contractor is, and if it's something I've been in the business myself in property for 40 plus years, I might have heard of them.
The leading expert we've had is from Stantec. They're I believe that the LFA actually have appointed them themselves to actually advise on such matters in the past. So we've gone to the top person there. That's the advisor, if you like, and sort of the independent advisor. The contractors, we have a company called Vertaze, and again, they're experts in this field, and have done this a number of times across.
You said that it's well known, it's tested. Where has it been done? How many? What sort of number of sites could this have been?
I think the site to the north, I think has undertaken it. What I don't know, if I'm honest, is whether they actually secured planning permission for that. But we are aware that they did those works. Sorry,
Well and Hatfield Crest.
thank you.
Right, big site there. Thank you.
Right, can we move past that? Sorry, I can't take questions from the floor. Right. I cannot take your question.
I have a question about, it relates to the claimed withdrawal of the objections by the Environment Agency and Thames Water. They haven't really withdrawn their objections, have they? Because they've said that their objection is effectively withdrawn subject to an acceptable source protection strategy. But we don't have a source protection strategy before us tonight, do we? So we're being asked on faith to kick the can down the road for a source protection strategy that's acceptable to those statutory consultees to come forward, but we don't have that source protection strategy, do we? So I guess my question to you is, how can we as decision makers satisfy ourselves that this is safe because we don't have a source protection strategy?
Good question. If I draw another example, You often approve plan permission subject to a whole range of other studies, and it might be further ecology studies or it might be further drainage studies. It's like that. What Environment Agency and Thames Water have said is they want to make sure there's a strategy in place, and I'll come back to how that then works in practice. Those conditions are before you. So if you were to say grant planning permission, it would be no doubt subject to the conditions which your officers have put before, and that includes that source protection strategy. So what then happens? Let's fast forward. Say we get planning permission this evening for that. Before we could undertake the works, we'd have to submit a typical discharge of condition. We submit that detail for approval to you as a council. Your officers would then consider it and inevitably consult Environment Agency, Thames Water, LFA. So yet again, there's another safeguard there to say, if they're not happy with that detail, no, go back and do more. So it's not a fait accompli to say you grant planning permission this evening and it's all free for all by a long stretch, not, because they have a whole range of conditions, and the one you've drawn your attention to is the specific one that's the additional one the Environment Agency were requesting. So that's the safeguard. Those are the hurdles that we'd still have to go through.
Yeah. Can I have one more quick question?
You can.
Yeah, thank you. My question relates to, I'm concerned about potential contamination, clearly, but what I'm almost more concerned about is the fact that this land at the moment is effectively a chalk sponge that absorbs surface water and delivers it into the aquifer for the people of Henley to drink. Now, if we fill the whole thing with concrete, then we construct a complex series of geological engineering solutions to capture that runoff and then pump it uphill, so that then the people of Henley can drink it. What happens if the pumps fail? What happens if we have, aren't we asking 50,000 people to kind of bet their drinking water on Taylor Wimpey and Taylor Wimpey's engineering?
Again, a very good question. And again, these are questions I've asked myself. So effectively the drainage strategy is that it's, firstly, the whole site isn't being covered in this grouting stiff mix. It's only proportions of it. So whatever areas are, and it's not, it's injecting into the ground in different locations. Some maybe different depths to the others. So once that's in place, it means that those areas which are then impenetrable, well, then we've got to drain it another way. And that's why the drainage pond, the second application, we'll get to that. And that's why the new drainage basin is in place, because yes, it's then pumped up and then it's distributed elsewhere so as not to cause a problem to the aquifer. So, and your specific question was around what happens if that pump fails. There's another pump in place and there's alarms. Again, very common. There's backups, and all of that detail would have to be agreed to a separate condition, which is before you, for approval by your officers, by the LFA, by your drainage officer, by the Environment Agency. But everyone has to tick the box for that. And if they're not satisfied, then we'll go back and find another way, I guess. But it's quite common, again, for that to happen. And it's very common for that question to be asked, and there's the answer.
What about power cuts?
Most of the site is being vibro compacted, is it not?
Sorry, I cannot take comments from a.
That's a very relevant question.
Right, Councillor Rollins, you have a question.
Yes, Mr. Chip, we all received an email from somebody called Michael Knott, which you were copied into.
Yes.
On the 11th of July. So just a few questions from there. On page 2 of the report, plan application for engineering works, it goes on to say the planning application is accompanied by an environmental statement, ES, which considers the likely significant effect on the development on water environment. The ES concludes that there are no likely significant effects. Okay, what if there are effects?
So the legal terminology that's used under environmental assessment regulations is exactly what's been referred to there. Significant effects. Are there likely to be significant effects? Is there a chance? And if the answer to that is yes, then you have to assess them. So the benchmark is well, what are those? What's the extent of those? And how, if there are any, how are they mitigated? And I'm not going to repeat what I've said before because I'm conscious of time. But effectively, you've got a separate independent assessment that says, are you satisfied with the details here? And is there a likely to be, is there a likely risk as a consequence? And the answer to that is no.
So it's got likely, but the answer is no.
Yeah, the likely significant effect is the legal terminology that's used.
Can I just go on to the aquifer and the coverage of the area? Do you know how deep the aquifer is?
Off the top of my head, no.
Does anybody know?
Yes.
In excess of 16 metres.
Okay, let's forget about that. And we don't know the exact coverage of the aquifer either, then, do we?
Not off the top of my head. I don't have that plan before me.
So just basically, for me anyway, so you're going to strip off 2 metres of topsoil.
Right.
That's what you're proposing.
Yeah.
What extent will that be covered by this well? What will that be, a metre, half a metre, or what?
So what happens, the methodology is that effectively you start from the point of topsoil's precious. You don't want to get rid of that. So effectively the scraping away of the topsoil is to make sure that can be replaced afterwards. So effectively what we're doing is moving that away in the areas we need to inject this stiff grouting mix into it.
Yeah.
We undertake those works where it's more solid. You've already got the sort of the chalk there and whatever other materials in place. You do the works into those and then you replace the top mix on top.
So what's the depth of that? Is it 100 mil, 200 mil, 500 mil?
The topsoil?
No, the grout.
The grout will be injected into holes. So it's not a solid. So effectively, the surveys that have been undertaken, the geo surveys across, it basically scans like an X-ray. So we've got a map effectively of where the potential sort of leaky bits are, if you like. So at that point, we can then inject into those. And that will only go maximum 2 meters above where the groundwater is. So
But you don't know how deep the holes are.
They vary completely.
So in fact, when you're compacting, that could go into the aquifer.
So the compacting happens after.
Yeah, but when you're filling these holes, you're going to keep ramming it down.
Only
it could
after
go
it's
down and affect the aquifer.
No, only after it's stiffened. So basically, it's a stiff mix that goes in. It's a very, very solid mix. So that goes in, solidifies, and then after a period of time when it's solid, then you can pat it down to make sure you've got a solid base, and that's suitable then for construction. It's quite a common approach then for compaction of ground.
So you're not going to fill the hole because you don't know how deep it is.
Not all the way down, no, because you only need to go so far to provide the strength of surface.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Just one more. We were talking about contingency plans. If all this goes pear-shaped, what is your contingency plan?
Well, it won't, because there's monitoring.
No. That's a different one. What would be the contingency plan?
Well, it won't, because we have such monitoring in place. The Environment Agency will be monitoring it. Everyone will be monitoring it. The whole world is wide sounds like they've been monitoring it. So it's a highly stringent approach. So it doesn't allow for a problem. And more importantly, as I mentioned earlier, there are no contaminants. So there's no contamination to the aquifer.
Can I just mention one thing? We're talking about the Thames Water and the EA. I haven't seen any reports from either of those.
Well, we'll do that in discussion later when we talk to the officer. Okay, thank you, Mr. Sheffield.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair. I
Ben,
think I've
sorry.
had more than my fair share, but I did have one more. I'll try and be brief. So it was just in relation to this 2 meter gap to the water level and the drought condition we're in at the moment. And I just wanted to ask whether that is relevant at all or presents any increased risk if we are if we're injecting to 2 meters away from the water supply when the water supply is that you would imagine a very low level because we're in drought condition at the moment. It talks about it a couple of times in Thames' response, and in 1.2 of 4 of the report, you have to kind of monitor it as it goes.
Yeah, and that's absolutely the point. At the point of the works, you monitor where the groundwater is and only go 2 meters above that.
Okay, but then the groundwater presumably will rise later when it starts raining again. So we'll end up with the groundwater rising into where this has been injected.
But it's solidified because it's such a solid mix. It solidifies. I couldn't give you the amount of time, but say it solidifies in a day, then it allows that. So the works would be undertaken over a period of time, and at each point we monitor where the groundwater is, and then you go up to above.
So once it's solidified, that's why I've sort of asking you about a little bit earlier, was the kind of how big an issue is it if, you know, solidified or not solidified, this stuff gets into the drinking water supply.
And that's why it's such a solid mix, and that's why there's not any contaminants in it either.
I think we've had lots of questions. Yeah, probably exhausted them. So thank you very much, Mr. Shepherd. I think that's been very useful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, so our final speaker for this subject is Councillor Lee Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair.
Who's the local member, or one of the local members.
Chair, councillors, I'm the ward councillor for Shiplake. The original outline application for Thames Farm was approved at appeal after a judicial review overturned Secretary of State Pickles' rejection of it. The new inspector then claimed a shortfall of 0.6 of a house in a SODC's housing land supply, short against a 3-year supply necessary to support the neighbourhood plan. So he ignored the neighbourhood plan, applied the tilted balance, and on the margin approved it. It couldn't have been more marginal, and back then nothing was known about the shot through chalk ground conditions below. Most of the RM matters were dealt with by P19 SO245 RM, but not drainage. Afterwards, and ever since, the discovery of the real ground conditions have changed everything. This application is deeply entwined with the drainage discharge application. This application is for massive treatment of 30,000 tonnes of concrete ground to fill the voids and sinkholes across a part of the site, and you saw it earlier in the green, a large part of the site, but not all of it. But the whole site is of chalk. It's perfectly obvious that ongoing rainfall and surface water will erode the chalk by dissolving it along the edges of the concrete grouting and below the detention basin at the top of the site on the west side. These solution pipes will then create a pathway directly to the drinking water aquifer, and we may also see further dangerous instability on site. The concrete will be pumped in with some 10 bar or 150 pounds per square inch of pressure, causing further fractures below ground. It's mentioned earlier that we'll know when to stop because the void's been filled. Actually, what it could have done is just broken into a neighbouring void, and that's why it hasn't come to the top. Or it could have broken through at the bottom and fractured through to the aquifer. We don't know, and it's very difficult to tell. Sadly, the exhaustive EA has okayed this as maybe workable, but they don't consider further erosion. The applicants use non-comparable and obscure US sources to suggest that this erosion stuff might take 100,000 years, which is ridiculous and not accepted. These specific conditions are quite different. The Secretary of State required the applicants to do an EIA, an environmental impact assessment, but they've refused to fully do so. They have simply offered a statement that the aquifer might be okay, but in my view, that's not an adequate or complete environmental impact assessment. Do we not think the 30,000 tonnes of concrete and its footprint and its impact on the land might have something to do with the environment, possibly? It's not good enough either for the aquifer or for the carbon footprint. These works and drainage ponds will not fit onto the site without the S73 application changing how it might be built out. All this is to build 84 homes in Shiplake, which has already had a ton of speculative and infill development locally, way beyond anything that SODC's local plans ever aimed. The 84 aren't needed locally and aren't even small units. Moreover, it will pour even more foul sewage into the already utterly overburdened Wargrave solid sewage treatment works. This too is real harm. There are suggestions that special sewage piping with specially sealed joints be installed under the A4155 and main Shiplake roads to pump the sewage down under pressure to Wargrave. The disruptive harm of these works alone will be long lasting and huge. All this nonsense needs to go back to the planning inspectorate to take another look at the whole mess. By refusal today, councillors, you can put this application where it belongs. Nothing on site can happen without this application and its Frankenstein works. Please refuse.
Thank you, Councillor Rawlings. Vicky, any questions? Anybody have any questions for Councillor Rawlings? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, Councillor, just wondering what your thoughts are on this elaborate pumping system with the what they call it, those lakes that they're going to hold back the
Sure.
water.
I mean, it's not abnormal in planning applications to find that there is a bit of a need to do some drainage stuff and have a couple of pumps with that resilience between two pumps. And if I was gambling on a single site with a few homes on it, I'd be pretty cool with that. I think that would be pretty resilient. If I'm talking about the drinking water for 50,000 people, I might have a slightly different level of risk tolerance and I might want a lot more than that. We're also saying, obviously, that it's okay to burn that electricity to pump the water around. And when it's pumped to the top of the site, as I say, it will then be allowed to infiltrate where logically it's going to create dissolution, isn't it? That's what happens with water, acid, slightly acidic rain and chalk. That's what happens. They're assuming that you, as I think somebody said, is potentially 16 metres in some places down to the aquifer. And we're going to know to stop short at just 2 metres above the aquifer. How will we know? How will we be sure under that pressure how that situation could change underground? I just don't think that the security here is appropriate for the level of risk that's in play. Planning is about judging the benefit of those 84 houses and judging the harm that might relate. And to me, it's a no-brainer. On the precautionary principle, as I said earlier, for Lord's sake, stop.
Councillor Dragonetti has a question.
Yes. Where exactly is the this pumping station? The waterworks that is going to be affected that supplies 50,000 people of Henley.
So there are different pumps, but there's the pump, the two pumps that take the water. The water is routed off the roofs and off the hard standing into the ponds at the bottom of the site.
No, I'm asking about in general. Just where is this? Where is the waterworks located?
Diagonally opposite the site.
I mean, how you know where the 50,000 people, where is their water coming from?
Their water is coming from the aquifer. This stuff.
Where's it extracted from?
It's structured. I think it's something like 15 meters away from this site is where it's extracted from. It is very, very close indeed.
There are other boreholes, but those ones in particular are.
I'm trying to ask a question about. So there are other locations, aren't there, that supply the aquifer from which the water is taken? And does that include sites like the various polo fields that are sprayed with, and the golf course that are sprayed with weed killers and things like that?
Generally speaking, what you have when you've got those huge numbers of meters between the ground and the aquifer, you've got a hell of a lot of filtration, and you've got a hell of a lot of ground evaporation or dissipation that is taking that stuff away. What we've got here is the capacity for solution pipes, creating a main line straight into the aquifer. And you're right that other sites and other ground can also feed the aquifer with water. But if you get contamination into the aquifer, that's the whole aquifer. It's not part of it.
There's a contamination from concrete that's been inserted.
It could be that. It could be runoff on site that may have particulates, or it may have petrochemicals in it.
Sorry, I think we're going off on a bit of a tangent here. Yeah. Right. Are there any further questions? Councillor Rob.
I just have a question about, on page 39 of our report, Emma says that she attributes neutral weight to the lack of objection, per se, associated from the EA and Thames Water.
Sorry, Joe, could you, I've got to page 39 or?
39, apologies, E39, para 7.7.
Right,
Given that the specialists that the council relies on to advise on technical matters do not consider that the development would have an unacceptable impact on the local water supply, I can only attribute neutral weight in the balance.
it is neither positive nor negative.
Right.
It's written here.
But I guess what I want you to explain, if you could, Lee, is what is it then that means that they're requiring a source protection strategy?
Yes.
So what would you like us to take from that? The fact that they're saying we need a source protection strategy, but we're being asked to sort of look away from that effectively and to attribute no weight or to, yeah.
You're giving a kind of a blank check, aren't you? That the source protection strategy, when it comes along, will be man enough for the job. If that's not a gender twisted.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Right, we need to move on. We spent over an hour on this. It's a bit now, so we probably needed to. Yeah, okay. Right, so thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Right, I need to go to the loo, so I'm just gonna hold it.
All this talk of water.
A 5-minute break. Okay, we'll make it started. Well, we'll restart. It's time for questions for the officer. So I'm sure there are loads. Councillor Wright.
Thanks for your report, Emma. Thank you, Chair. I'm glad that this has come to committee, and years ago, back in 21, I remember being involved in this, and I remember certainly Councillor Rawlins and I was saying this decision is too significant to be sort of done under reserve matters by an officer. But I'm left wondering, why are we here at all? Because we're effectively being asked to defer our decision making and our discretion to Thames Water and the Environment Agency under the auspices of this source protection strategy, which we don't have before us. And as Councillor Rawlins said, I think it's a good point. We're kind of writing a blank check, aren't we? And we're putting a lot of stock in this source protection strategy being up to the job. So as decision makers, what is left for us to do?
I would say from our perspective, we're confident that the Environment Agency and Thames Water, they have enough information that they're satisfied that this development can take place, subject to those details. So I would say it's not unusual that we're in that situation where a technical consultee wants some details subject to a condition. So yeah, that's the position we're in. But given that those technical consultees haven't objected to the scheme, they've said there is a solution that can be secured by condition, and we are recommended to use conditions where we can. We feel it's the right way forward.
But it could fall over, couldn't it? If it turns out that the source protection strategy is not up to the job, then this could all be washed away, really, couldn't it?
I mean, obviously, when if the application was approved and the details were submitted, we would consult with the Environment Agency, Thames Water, our internal drainage officer. So they would then have the option to say whether the details are acceptable or not.
I guess, that's my concern, is that we don't have that strategy in front of us. It hasn't been approved. It hasn't been accepted. So we're being asked effectively to make a decision without the information we need to ascertain whether this is safe or not. Really.
I mean, I suppose I would say when a consultee asks for a condition, they should be satisfied that there is a solution that can be achieved, that there is something that is acceptable to deal with that solution. So I would say Thames Water and the Environment Agency are in that position.
Thank you.
Councillor Higgins.
Once we do have a source protection strategy and it's been reviewed with the Environment Agency and Thames Water, would that automatically be a delegated matter? It would automatically, so there would be no further opportunity for the committee to engage with the matter.
So our discharge of condition applications, they don't ever come to committee, they're delegated.
Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, we keep talking about all these experts. I'm an expert. I'm sure I can find on something. We could even be planning this evening, you never know. But the Thames Farm Action Group have their own expert. They have JBA Consulting, who give a total different view on the experts of well, I presume Thames Water and the EA. Not that we've got any reports from either of those, which I've been before. So did you take any notice of JBA Consulting on their report?
So I would say we've got a number of reports in front of us. JBA Consulting have done their report for Thames Farm Action Group, and we've got the Stantec information and the other technical information that's in support of Taylor Wimpey's application. So our technical consultees, the Environment Agency, who are the experts, they've had a look at that, and I would say that they're effectively our consultants. They're our specialists who are looking at it. And although the Environment Agency haven't done a full-blown report, they have done a consultation response, which is available on our website. So that's our review of the information.
But so did they put a report forward on JBA Consulting? Have they made a report on their expertise?
No, they haven't, and we wouldn't expect them to do that. They've considered the application on its merits.
Councillor Higgins.
appreciate this might be something that you can't sort of fully comment on, but what I was trying to get at in my questioning to the agent was the degree of risk posed by, by potential sort of this slurry getting into the groundwater at the point it's liquid, or the groundwater being immersed in it. And I don't think we quite got there. And reading the report, there are lots of references to it, so it's clearly a concern, because Thames Water and the Environment Agency responses talk about talk about concerns with it. That sort of 2 meter distance we've talked about quite a lot, and given the depth of the excavation, it sort of intrinsically seems a little bit concerning as well. I don't know whether we've got anything else to offer on that level of risk.
I mean, I can't unfortunately give you sort of a figure, a quantitative, it's this percent. I suppose all I can say is that it's a scheme that, from the perspective of our specialists who have assessed it, they're satisfied that the mitigation in place effectively reduces the risk to a level that the scheme should progress.
Well, I see no further questions.
I have one.
You have one, please.
There's been no talk about the disruption and noise during the process. We've heard relatively little about that. 10,700 cubic meters of grout is going to take an enormous amount of material to make it. That's a lot of lorries. I mean, I would estimate a typical lorry might take 20 cubic meters. But I've worked out that that's 535 lorries over 35 weeks, 15 a week, 3 a day. But it could be a lot more than that. It's a lot of traffic. It's a lot of noise. Are there any concerns that you have, Emma, on the impact of that on neighbours and people living close to the site? And also the process, the compaction, is this a noisy process? Does it create a load of dust? What happens during the process? I've looked at the website of Vertase, and it looks like hell on earth when they're moving stuff around on the sites that are highlighted on their website. That hasn't been commented on much. Have you anything you can say?
It's certainly something that we've assessed. It's a case of, as with all construction activity, it will create a disturbance. It will be noisy. There will be extra vehicles on the road.
Yeah.
I think in my report I've taken some of the figures that they've used. So there would be an increase of 52 two-way heavy goods vehicle movements per day. And it's an increase in heavy goods vehicles of up to 8.5% on the A4155 corridor. That's a level of traffic that the highways officer at the county council haven't raised an objection to. We've also asked our environmental health team to have a look into the scheme, and they've also not raised any objections. And I would say we've got those mitigation measures. So we've got a restriction on working hours, so it won't be at unsociable times. We've also asked for a condition to secure a construction method statement, so that will help deal with matters such as dust. And with a plan to mitigate the impact in terms of their construction activities overall. So that's something that we do have some control over. But yes, inevitably with all construction activities, there will be some disturbance.
Can I add on that? You cover this on 6.62, but it's based on Taylor Wimpey's transport assessment, not an independent transport assessment. Yeah. And you talk about the A4155 corridor. What's meant by the A4155 corridor? Is that the road itself, or is that other roads around?
I'm not sure I can answer that, I'm afraid, because although it's based on Taylor Wimpey's transport assessment, it has been independently verified by the county council highways officer. But in terms of what the actual meaning of that term is, I'm afraid I
Why they
don't
use the
know.
term corridor? Why don't they say 4155? That to me means this, they're considering other things, and therefore the effect on the 4155 is much greater than what they're trying to say it is. Yeah, sorry. Councillor Keith-Ron.
It strikes me that this proposal has one hell of a carbon footprint. And yet, because it only affects part of the site, it manages to dodge biodiversity net gain. And then it is, concrete is very carbon intensive, isn't it? I mean, I have no idea at all, but
Have one meeting here, I think there's another one taking place over there.
Sorry, could you keep quiet?
All right, thank you.
how are gardeners going to flourish in this concrete environment?
In terms of your biodiversity net gain question, but as I understand it, the extent, the footprint of the works, because it's effectively just the discs that are at ground level, it doesn't trigger the need for the statutory 10% biodiversity.
No, I know, I appreciate that, but it just strikes me as extraordinary as they can get away with it, considering, as I say, the very high carbon footprint of this proposal. And as I say, I'm also wondering how, attempts to provide greenery and green amenity spaces is going to flourish in this environment. But anyway, yeah.
Councillor Rob.
Very quick one. Thanks, Emma. I wondered, did we ever hear back from the Environment Agency back in the mists of time when you asked them about a screening opinion or an environmental impact assessment? Did they ever come back to you?
No, they didn't, but they did go back to the Secretary of State who, because as a council, we didn't issue a screening opinion. Taylor Wimpey then effectively pushed it up to the next level, and the Secretary of State issued a screening direction, and the Environment Agency did contribute towards the screening direction.
Following orders from the Secretary of State?
That's right, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just a very quick one.
So I need to get every question sort of sorted, really.
So clearly, if we were to approve this, the source protection strategy and all the conditions followed would be absolute things followed would be vital. Should we therefore be attaching any weight to the fact that we could appreciate in a very different way, but there's a previous breach of condition on this site?
No, I would say that's something that we can't take into account.
Okay.
A previous one, sorry.
Breach of condition.
Over.
Yes.
Right, I think we've exhausted the question, we've exhausted our speakers and talkers. It's now for the committee to deliberate it and make a decision. So I'm looking for a proposal, please. Councillor Roller.
I propose refusal. On the grounds, yeah, sorry.
Is that seconded? No. Yes, thank you, Councillor Roller. Okay, when we have your grounds for refusal, please.
I'm not satisfied that the conditions attached to this are adequate at addressing the very real risk of contamination of the groundwater and the very real risk of impacts on the aquifer, providing drinking water for 50,000 people. Furthermore, we're being asked to very much rely on the expertise of the statutory consultees, one of which never responded to a request from us, another of which I think has, I'm sorry to say, a very poor record in terms of responding to planning applications. I don't believe that those consultees are the appropriate people to be determining conditions of this seriousness. So I don't believe the conditions are adequate to protect, to mitigate the risk presented.
Okay, well, I think we'll debate this, then I'll go back for a bit of clarification on that. Do you speak now, Ken, or?
Well, I do, because I'd like to add a few other things in as well.
Okay.
If the proposal will accept them. I have a major problem with not personally, but then again, if I lived there, it could be personally, with the foul water. Joe Bob will tell you this, one of the worst places for sewage going into the Thames is Wargrave. And we're proposing to add to that. So I think we should add that in there. Surface water is another problem. If anybody knows Mount Ida, which is in the other side of the road, that floods. And my wife was speaking to someone the other day whose house got flooded there. So it's been flooded now. This is only going to make it worse when surface water comes off. And the major problem, I think, to be fair to Mr. Shepherd, he gave some excellent answers, but I have great difficulty when they don't know where the aquifer is exactly. They don't know where all the holes are. Yet they can come up with a figure of 10,700 square meters of fill. You know, how can you come up that? It could be double that figure. It could be 20,000 for all we know. There's no evidence there from me that tells me that these figures can be correct. It could be much worse than what they're suggesting. I'm partly annoyed that there's no reports from the EA and the Thames Water other than they support the application. You know, I'd like to see much more detail. There's no detail for me to support their comments. You know, I'd like to see their reports on why they are supporting or proposing to support the application. I don't see that. The major problem, obviously, I think to all of us here is the drinking water. That's you know, I don't know where this number of 50,000 comes from, but nobody has said that it's an incorrect figure. If that was to go wrong, which was my question, what's your contingency plan? Only to be told there's no contingency plan. Now, you know, if this was going to go wrong, there has to be a contingency plan somewhere to rectify the damage that's been caused. And they wouldn't know where the damage is because they don't know where the aquifer is. So all these things, there's just no evidence here. I read all these reports this afternoon, and I didn't write a big report. I was going to say tonight, I've listened to this, but I just did write down risk and harm. To me personally, there's too big a risk for this, much too big a risk, and the harm is there to be seen, because if things don't go wrong, it's going to be major problems for all that area on their drinking water. So, as I say, I was open-minded when I came there. And by the way, although I called the application in, that was on behalf of Henry Town Council, by the way. Yeah, but that's all I've got to add, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Would be added by the proposed.
It's open for debate. Anybody wish to contribute to the debate? Councillor MacDonald.
Yes, supporter of Councillor Harlett's comments and argument. Can't help without further evidence. 6,000 elephants, was it, worth of concrete going into the aquifer, and then continue happy to supply good quality water to the residents. I think listening to the debate and discussion showed that I was listening. Then I'm not convinced at the potential moment that there's sufficient evidence that would prompt it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, I feel pretty uncomfortable about this one. So I think we've been left with lots of unanswered, potentially serious questions. And although I appreciate the sort of, the condition and the mitigating strategy, this source protection strategy, it's, effectively this is the last opportunity, it seems, for it to come back to some sort of democratic scrutiny. So it just seems we're missing, there's sort of a very significant risk hovering at the fringes that I don't think has been, fully articulated, explained, explored, and that makes me pretty uneasy.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Peter.
well, I'm not going to support the proposal. I think we've completely overblown this question of the impact on 50,000 people getting their drinking water. There's a five hectare site, of which these grouting proposals are only a small fraction of it, and they're not going to. There must be, probably the aquifer covers probably about 20,000 hectares of land all around in Harpston and the golf course and everywhere, all these woods here. And filling these holes with some inert material such as concrete that's used in building piles, and the gravel. I can't believe that this material is going to have any adverse impact on the water supply compared to everything else that goes into that aquifer. The A4155 has its traffic going along it, and there's rubber from the tires. There's the fuel that spills off. All of that goes into the aquifer, and it's picked up and processed, and it's eliminated. So this proposal is not going to have any serious noticeable impact, in my view, on the quality of the water supplied for 50,000 people. Is 5.5 hectares supplying 50,000 people with water? No, of course it isn't. Anyway, so that's why I'm not supporting this proposal.
Councillor Topic.
Yeah, it's just following on from what Peter said. I think our problem, or my problem particularly, is that I don't think I can judge this if I don't know, and nobody's been able to answer this. I mean, Peter's come up with a figure of 20,000 hectares, but I'm not sure where that figure comes from, to be honest. I mean, that's maybe a pluck out the ass. But if we could be told that this is 1%, or is it 5%, or is it 50%? And we can at least have some idea of the potential impact if something was to go wrong here as a result of these works. And I don't feel we've got enough information in front of us to be able to make that judgment properly. And that is a concern to me. If Peter's right, or even close to being right, that it's 5 out of 20,000, then it would be easy to say that this is de minimis. If, however, it's 5 hectares out of 50, and it's 10% of the land that supplies this aquifer, then I would say that is quite a serious contribution that, if it goes wrong, could cause us a serious problem. But I think we need to know that before we can make the right, a proper decision here.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Stanley?
Yeah, I was pretty interested to hear Taylor Winfrey's expertise on that, and I realised you're talking to councillors that are lay members of the public and often don't know these technical details. But I do feel that the harm and the risk that Councillor Arlott referred to is just too big a risk to be dealing with. The potential water supply for 50,000 homes. So I'm going to vote with the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Chair, before we move on.
I'm just going to come back to Councillor Rob to say I'll go through some advice on the wording of your.
I'm happy to have the advice now. Actually.
Yeah.
Before I provide some advice on that, could I just allow Em to come back on a few factual matters that have been raised? Is there anything that you want to sort of either just respond to where you've got relevant information?
Thank you. Yeah, so I've actually been sent an email from Taylor Wimpey that's pointed me in the direction of some of the information you're after. And the information is actually contained in one of the technical documents that was attached to one of Thames Farm Action Group's comments on a 2021 discharge of condition application. So that's how I've got the information, but it is information that's been provided to us as the council from Thames Farm Action Group. And I think that answered the question that you've been asking. So it says that the SPZ Source Protection Zone 1 area is approximately 1,280,000 square metres, while the site footprint is 57,300 square metres, which is approximately 4.5% of the Source Protection Zone 1 area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a figure. Thank you.
Thanks.
It makes much difference. Thank you, Anna. Okay, I think we need some advice on the wording of any possible resolution, so we get it right. So,
Thank you, Chair. So, listening to what the proposer and seconder have said, obviously the key concern here really is the impact on the drinking water supply. And if notwithstanding the views of our expert consultees, which includes statutory consultees, you are minded to
vote against this application, I advise that you should refer to the fact that the site is underlain by a principal aquifer and is within a groundwater source protection zone, and to there being a water abstraction for public water supply at a water treatment centre near the site. Yeah, so referring to those facts. And then going on to say that if it is your view that the application has failed to demonstrate that the proposed engineering operation and the ground stabilisation works would not pose an unacceptable risk on the aquifer and public water abstraction.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, Paula.
Yes, and I assume because foul drainage is not being decided tonight, Wargrave sewage treatment works is not a matter for consideration tonight. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll let you sum up now.
I don't need to. Paula just summed up for me brilliantly. But the fact that this is in a source protection zone one, an aquifer protection zone one, which we should be giving the highest level of protection to. The Secretary of State themselves pointed out that the risk of that there were highly significant risks of contamination or risk to the water environment. And that came from the Secretary of State directly. The statutory consultees, both the Environment Agency and Thames Water, in their initial objections, pointed out risk to the aquifer. And that risk, as far as I'm concerned, remains. And I'm not satisfied that we can simply wash our hands of this, kick the can down the road and write a blank cheque, as Councillor Warren said, for Taylor Wimpey and the Environment Agency in Thames Water. I think as decision makers, it's incumbent upon us to exercise the precautionary principle. And from what I can hear from other councillors, none of us, or perhaps one of us, is satisfied that what we see before us is going to provide adequate protection and mitigation against those risks that have been elucidated very clearly tonight.
Okay, committee, we've had a proposal for refusal on the grounds that I think we know they've been related to us. All those in support of the proposal for refusal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 in support of it. Those against? 1. And
I'm abstaining.
Okay.
On the basis of
so that proposal is approved.
Hey.
And the planning application is refused. On the grounds.
I'd rather be clapped in than clapped out.
Chair,
Sorry?
We pause. Could we pause?
Can we pause?
For a break?
Yes, sorry, yes, yeah. First of all, Right, so agenda item 2 is again on Thames Farm, Reading Road, Lower Shiplake. But before we move on to that, Paula wants to say something. I think actually, oh, sorry, I'll let you say.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to just take an opportunity to obviously reflect on the fact that the council has reached a position in respect of the first application. And that has some implications for the consideration of the second. So given that members have resolved to refuse the engineering operations that are associated with the ground stabilisation work, which are required to allow housing development on this site to proceed, and those operations have informed the content of the second application, that's the one that considers conditions, my advice to you is that you should defer consideration of this second section 73 application to allow officers to review both the content of the report and our recommendation. This would allow the application to then be determined in accordance with the council's constitution, that being the case that if the officer recommendation remains for approval, we would bring it back to the committee for final determination. If the officer recommendation after the review is for refusal, we would be able to deal with that under delegated powers.
Okay, thank you, Paula. It's my position, Chairman. I'll say actually it delivers that that application. It's undeliverable now. Yeah. Therefore, I propose that we defer it. Yeah. Those leaves that to be seconded. Yeah. Okay. All those in favour of deferment? That's unanimous. So thank you. So we will not be hearing that second item on the agenda on Thames Farm tonight. Okay, so that will not be heard tonight. So we move on to the car park. Agenda item 9, which is the car park at Station Road, Didcot. I have one speaker on this, well, 2 speakers. And what that's what Dolly's going to do.
I'll listen to the debate and make any comments after the debate.
So do we have Andrew Busby here?
So Chairman, please, Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer. Sorry, I'm trying to rush it through. Case officer first. So Paul. Thank you, Chair.
You got one? I've got a knock on the screen.
No, we're waiting for Paul.
So no, you're actually waiting for me. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen again.
Oh.
I'll pause that awkwardly. It's actually waiting with me.
Is it necessary?
I think it would be helpful for us to refer to some plans.
No, that's
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
I don't know. It's good.
It's good.
There we go.
Thank you, Chair. I must first update members to the fact that the council has received an objection from a local resident that is not referenced in the report. Broad concerns expressed by the resident in their comments are the continual renewal of applications for the use of the land as a car park, failure to comply with the adopted emerging local plan, the car park use is redundant due to the construction of the multi-storey car park extension, proposal impacts the long-term redevelopment of the site, and that there is a failure to consider more beneficial uses for the land. Some of these concerns overlap with points raised by Didcot Town Council, which were considered prior to the production of the report. But to clarify for members, had officers had sight of these comments prior to forming a recommendation and publishing a report, the recommendation to grant planning permission would be the same. This application is before members this evening as the Didcot Town Council have objected to the application, in addition to the fact that South Oxfordshire District Council are the applicants. The site lies on the south side of Station Road, opposite Didcot Parkway railway station. It forms part of a wider site known as Didcot Gateway, which is allocated for development in the local plan. Planning permission for the use as a car park has effectively been renewed on several occasions, with the most recent being in 2023 for a period of 2 years. The current permission will expire on the 11th of August. This application seeks to retain the car park for a further period of 2 years. The temporary nature of the development reflects the overall policy direction of regenerating this site, ensuring that the matter is revisited every couple of years and recognising that the use of the land as a car park in the long term is not in line with the overall goal of creating an attractive entrance to the town. Since the previous permission in 2023, an application has been submitted and a resolution to grant planning permission has been made for the erection of an office on the site, an indication of progression towards the longer term goals of achieving the site's regeneration. The use of the land as a car park, when new permanent physical development is not required, remains the most appropriate in the short term, whilst plans are progressed for the permanent redevelopment. A temporary permission for a further period of 2 years remains appropriate and justified, and as such, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Paul. I saw Andrew Busby online.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. Andrew Busby, Head of Development and Corporate Landlord, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm speaking on behalf of South Oxfordshire District Council as the landowner of this site, and any reference in the statement related to the work of the Council as a landowner. Council has submitted the application under consideration for temporary planning permission to use the former Great Western Public House site as a car park for a period of 2 years until the 2nd of September 2027. This will enable continued operation of Station Road car park on the site, which has been in operation under temporary permissions for a number of years, until such time as a longer term development comes forward on the site. I completely acknowledge the issues associated with submitting repeated temporary permissions for use of this site as a car park, and had hoped that this repeated application for a temporary permission would not be required. However, whilst the Council has been progressing its long-term plans for the redevelopment and regeneration of the site, the Council's application for an office redevelopment was only recently granted approval at Planning Committee on the 2nd of July 2025. Subject to the completion of relevant legal agreements. At the point of submitting this application in January 2025, it was known immobilisation on site would not commence for some time after the current temporary car parking permission expires on the 2nd of September 2025. Due to the need for completion of the relevant planning agreements, procurement of a contractor and securing necessary approval. This application, therefore, enables interim continued car parking as the best use of the site until development comes forward. Current car park remains consistently well used, whilst the nearby multi-storey car park has been developed to absorb capacity once the site in question is permanently redeveloped. The provision of both car parks in the interim period provides choices for users, with the Council's car park providing an opportunity to park in close proximity to the train station, and for all those that require it. This application therefore proposes no change to the number of type of spaces, nor the access arrangements for the car park. As a result, there will be no different impact to the surrounding area and neighbours than it is at present. We are pleased that this has been reinforced by Oxfordshire County Council as local highway authority, who have not objected to the application. Despite the focus on continued car parking use, opportunities remain for active travel for those who wish to make use of the large cycle facility adjacent to the train station across the road. In considering wider opportunities, the Council remains actively and positively engaged with neighbours on the Gateway site and across the road at the train station with regards to the Council's current and future proposals for redevelopment and regeneration of the site within the wider context of the Didcot Gateway. This includes owners of the multi-storey car park and Great Western Railway who are supportive of the Council's approach. Therefore, this application presents best use of the land for a temporary period and does not harm the character and appearance of the site or create any adverse highway impact due to the current operation as a car park. It does not undermine policy or priorities for the longer term redevelopment and regeneration of the site and has been proposed within the context of this redevelopment. Council also acknowledges there are likely implications for the redevelopment timescales of the permitted office in the context of local government reorganisation, and a decision is due to be made by the council on whether to cease the office scheme pending the outcome of LGR. Whether the council decides to cease the office project or not, and the general implications associated with LGR are not a material planning consideration with respect to this application, which should be considered on its own merits. Extending the temporary car park use to September 2027 enables continued best use of the site in the period until a decision can be made by the newly elected shadow authority about the planned future of the site. We acknowledge that respondents to the application consider there to be other better uses for the site, but the council has not been approached in the past 2 years to consider an alternative use. Uses that have been proposed previously include the provision of a temporary pop-up shops and restaurants may have a detrimental impact on other parts of the town, as advised by the council's economic development team, or would not be suitable for such a temporary period. Installation of any such uses would require enabling works and significant investment that would only be viable in an operation for an extended period of time.
30 seconds left.
Given the constraints of LGR and financial implications such as investment, without certainty on the future authority, there is little other decision the council can make at this time for alternative uses of the site. And therefore, I encourage members of the planning committee to consider this application on its merits and within the context of the wider picture for the Didcot Gateway area. And thank you, committee.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Richard, any questions? Councillor Roberts.
Yes, Andrew, the previous application was for 2 years. This one, recommendation was temporary use of land. You did mention September 2027. So should that date be added on to temporary use of land until September 2027?
That's correct. Yes, the temporary use of this land application should be 2027. That's the 2nd of September.
So we can add that into the recommendation.
So it's not from today, it's from when the other one expires.
Yeah.
Or we can add it into the end of 2027, yeah.
Chair, we can provide you with advice about that because it's coming up with the planning conditions. So.
Okay, it's an economic condition about it. Any further questions? I've seen none, so thank you very much. So thank you for being patient and waiting for us.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Planning Committee.
Okay, all right, the ward councillor is sat over here. He does not choose to speak as ward councillor, but he's on the committee.
I'll wait to debate.
You wait that, okay. So therefore it's questions back to Paul Bowers. That's a bit long.
It's very quick and just get concrete evidence on this. What I would like to ask, so it is SOD who own the land, not Homes England.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
that is correct.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Homes England own some of the land around there, I believe, but not that particular bit. Yes, yeah, okay.
Oh, Chair, sorry. This wants to come back.
If I may, Chair, just correct what I said in my opening. For some reason, I said the 11th of August was when the permission lapses. It doesn't. It lapses on the 2nd of September 2025. Hence the 2-year new permission taking it to 2027.
Okay. Councillor Robert.
This is a question for Paul. Paul, if the permission lapses, then hoardings go up and the thing sits there and rots. Is that right? There's no, I mean, it's not really a question for you as the planning officer, it's more a question for Andrew Busby. But if we refuse tonight, the hoardings go up, that is it, it can't be used. It's effectively derelict land, correct?
The permitted use of the site as a car park would have to cease.
Yeah.
What then, as a landowner, the applicant chooses to do to secure the site, they have a number of options, including potentially, yes.
They could appeal against themselves.
Wait for
enforcement.
Yeah.
Carry on wait for enforcement themselves. That would never happen. Right, sorry, we're adjusting. Still with questions for Paul. Councillor Sadler.
Yeah, my concern is that there's a bit of deja vu about this because I've sat here and had this discussion 2 years ago about exactly the same thing. And I think it's just an issue that the residents just feels like it's just being kicked into the long grass all the time. I know there's the planning application for the council offices, and that was approved only last committee meeting. But the LGR is still under discussion, and I think from what I'm hearing from the kind of comments is that just kicking it into the long grass is not great, and it's because the trouble is, I hear the thing about derelict land. I get it, but it's just I just wonder whether is there anything else that could be done with the land that's better?
I covered.
I thought I knew I was going with this, Chair.
It was covered by Andrew Busby, but it's not a question for Paul.
Yeah, you're right.
It was covered by Andrew. Yeah. I think he did say they'd consider other uses, but nothing's come forward.
That's right. The market stalls and so forth. I know. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. That's all our consultees. So we go for a proposal, please, from someone. Did you want to?
Well, you go.
Yeah, so I'm happy to propose approving following the officer's recommendation.
Okay, that's seconded.
I will second.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any debate?
If I can.
Yes.
I mean, I am aware fully of Didcot Town Council's views and other residents' views on this. However, before us, the planning application to continue as a car park, there isn't an alternative. They would need to talk to SODC and come up with an alternative to actually discuss. So in my mind, there is nothing actually to refuse that proposal. And I would urge others who would wish to see an alternative to actually discuss that with the appropriate council and come up with that. So that could be at the next planning committee when this is looked at again.
Yeah, we'll say it doesn't really say it has to be a car park for the next 2 years. There's just a provision for it to be a car park for the next 2 years. It doesn't have to be a car park. Yeah. Councillor Rob?
I think it's really depressing. I really do. I mean, that site has been sitting there as ugly as you like for how long? And we've been talking about this being key to the regeneration of Didcot, giving people a welcome when they step off the train into the centre of Didcot, the fastest growing town in the world, apparently. And or so it feels like, I'm sure, Axel. And yet here we are yet again saying, let's stick a car park right opposite a mainline railway station. It's only 61% at capacity, but it seems we have no option. I think it's really depressing, actually. And I think Didcot deserves it a lot better than this. I really do. Anyway,
I think we agree with you, but that's not what we're discussing tonight.
No.
Councillor Topping.
Yeah, I think the objection here was that was based upon the fact that it was no longer needed. Is it right to say that the multi-storey car park could accommodate the 253 spaces if this eventually, hopefully, will go? Does anybody know if they can? Because I happen, on a personal basis, I use this car park a lot. And I use it because it's really convenient. I use it because it's directly to the station. I use it because walking to the multi-storey is a real bore. It's a longer drive for me to get into it. It's tedious then going up the levels, and then it's quite a long walk to the station. So I use this because it's easy and simple. And so do a lot of other people. I mean, this 61% is nonsense. I mean, during the week, it's after 9 o'clock, you struggle to get a space at all. I would have said in the week, it's at least 90% full. The weekend, it might only be 40 or 50% full. They reduce the price down to 2 or 3 quid to make it as cheap as possible. It's incredibly useful, but I share the other views around the table here that it's a shame that the first thing you see when you come out of the station is a car park. It's very rough and ready. It looks awful. I cannot wait for something better to happen to this site, ideally an office for our council, or the future council that replaces us. I really hope that that happens as soon as possible, but I don't see that there is any alternative to renewing this planning permission, because I'd rather see car parking on it than hoardings and nothing happening. And it would be insane not to make the best use of this site, which is car parking.
Chair, through you, we've got an answer regarding the car parking spaces, I think. For Councillor Topping.
So in relation to the Great Western Railway car park that you mentioned, and referring back to the application that committee considered 2 weeks ago for the office use, the Highway Authority advised that there was sufficient car parking capacity at that Great Western Railway car park were the car park, the SADC car park to be removed.
Yeah, I just think it's a shame that that really nice old building that was on this site was demolished 10 years ago. It's one of the best buildings in Didcot. And it's anyway, enough of it, enough of my rant.
Right, Councillor Howard, can I just speak briefly on behalf of the impression of Satwell?
Hello. Shepherd's Green, please.
I'm sorry, Shepherd's Green. I do apologise. Could you explain why? I was under the impression this was down to build homes on them, with homes. And what happened there? Why did that never happen?
Not material.
It's not material. I think that's not relevant.
Well, it could be relevant to my decision now.
Well, there's a current planning application for homes on the Homes England site adjoining this site, and that planning application is still being considered.
Okay.
But it is a separate issue.
It's a separate issue. Councillor Sandley.
Just in conclusion, my view is that 2 years ago we had this. It was looking like this was going to be the last time. It was almost kind of like promised it was going to be the last time. I don't know if they actually said that, but that's how it felt. And I felt, very much that it was like, we should let it go. It's an old piece of gravel. It's as good as a car park and anything else. It's fine. We had the discussion then about there being enough capacity for Great West Railway, station parking and so forth. So it is a shame. I mean, we talk about optics a lot in Little Town France, and I think that the optics of this don't look great for the council. I mean, as the landlord, it really doesn't. It doesn't look fantastic.
Yes. Perhaps we could. I think we all don't like the view that we get out when you come out to Didcot Station to see this car park. Could we, as much as council, have a hoarding up that's actually painted? If this was in Europe, we would have a hoarding that's painted up, trees or something.
Sorry, we're straying off the point.
We have a condition to make it.
But Chair, are we? Because Councillor Dragonetti raises a really good point. It is ugly. Is there the possibility of us imposing a condition to improve the facade of that car park, whether it be through painted hoardings or through landscaping, temporary landscaping? If not reasonable, I don't know.
I was just going to remind members about the test for conditions. They are that it must be necessary, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise, reasonable in all other respects.
Not necessary.
They see that it would be an acceptable condition.
Because it's already in use as a car park.
Yeah, but the point of order, our councillor for Shepherd's Green has already spoken.
I apologise.
I'll get out of the way.
Right, so I'm going to close this down. I'm going to go back to Ben, who proposed it.
Nothing particularly to add. We all hope the best things for the site, but the issue before us seems fairly straightforward.
Okay, all those in favour of the proposal, please show. It's nearly unanimous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. 8, 4. Anything else against? Those, okay.
Abstaining.
You do care, abstaining. All right, thank you, committee. All right, we must go on. I missed it last time to the appeals information at the back of your sheet.
Thank you, Chair. So that's just information on appeals that we have received. They've been lodged in June, and also decisions that we've received over the course of the last month. And you'll see that we have had a good rate of success. And those decisions are actually delegated ones on this occasion, so they're not the committee ones to point out, but a good rate of success.
And you're really pleased about the last one, the Warburg one, Costa
Yeah,
Award.
so that is an award in our favour for a last minute withdrawal of anything. That was going to be heard by public inquiry, so that was a very good result.
Well done.
Congratulations. So you've got the, Rotherfield Road Henley's good. It's our committee decision.
Yeah, so that will be tested and we'll
So that will be
report back on that in
tested.
due course.
Yes, it's just been lodged. Yeah, okay. So thank you very much, committee. Interesting meeting. When was it? When are we here again?
We're back in, on the 13th of August, so there's a 4-week break.
4-week break, 13th of August. That's a more interesting decision.